Hey guys, welcome back to Dwood. I'm David Stoller. In this episode, we're going to go over making these flags here. I'm going to show you how to make them start to finish. Let's get started. The boards I used in most of my flags come from Home Depot. They just seem to have a straighter board with less twist. Here I'm planing them down on both sides before I cut them. I then send them through my table saw, just cutting the edge off to give it a nice square edge. I move my fence over to 1.5 inches to cut my strip. The second strip should just cut the edge off, squaring up the other side. You need 13 strips for each flag. Here I'm sanding down each strip just on the surface that's going to show. I lay my 13 pieces out in the order I want them for my flag. I then start at the bottom and grab every other strip. These will be the ones that are burned solid all the way across. I set them to the side and then move my top 3 over to the left side. These will be where the union are created. I measure out my union. There will be a set of plans available on my website in the near future. I place a board at my measurement for the union and use my torch to burn along that edge, giving it a nice clean line. I then burn the rest of my union with that torch. The torch I'm using right now is a little low on fuel, so it's not burning as well as it should, and it's creating a lot more flame than it usually will. Once I burn all the tops, I spread them apart just to get the edges nice and clean with my burn marks. Now I'm going to burn my other stripes that are solid from one end to the other. This goes a lot faster and does a lot better job when you have a full tank of fuel. As you can see, I do one side, flip it over, and then do the other side. Now I'm moving on to those top union pieces and just doing some charring along the white stripes just to give it a little more character and pop the grain. I lay my flag back out, making sure my stained piece is in the middle. In this part of the video, I'm using a jig that I made in a previous video. That'll be down in the bottom description if you want to see a video on how to make that. This jig simply helps me keep the flag flat while I clamp it up and nail it. Here I'm marking out for my strips and how far up from the bottom I need my strips so that the frame will fit around. I clamp it all together and pull it tight and put my jig in place to hold it nice and flat. I use a rubber hammer to flatten out any spots that are bowed up a little bit and to get a nice flat surface. Put glue on my strips and nail them down with my brad nailer. I put 2 nails in each board. I then take my rubber hammer and hit really hard on top of those strips to make sure they get a good seat on the flat surface. Let it dry for a little while, then take it out of the clamp. I take my flag out of the jig and move the jig out of the way. As you can see, I did a red and yellow line signifying firefighter and dispatcher. I'm now going to move on to making the frame by squaring up the end of one board. I'm going to measure out my side pieces, which will cover the entire length of one side. I take those side pieces, lay them up on end together, and make a mark. That will be how much I cut off of my bottom and top pieces to make my frame. First thing I do is, again, cut off the edge of my board to get a nice square surface, and then cut it down to 2 inches. I use my Craig jig to make pocket holes to secure the frame to the flag. I then use a brad nailer and glue to glue my frame together, making sure that all my pocket holes are facing in the same direction. I'm then going to lay down my flag face down and lay my frame on top of it to make sure that it fits correctly. I'll then flip the frame over and put glue around every corner of the frame. Then I'll line everything up back on my flag, use pocket hole screws, and align everything up, screwing it down. Here I'm heating up my brand to brand the back of the flag with my logo. I love this part right here when I pull that stamp up and I can see that burnt logo. Now I'm going to mark the center of my flag and install the French cleat system in. I'll have a video later on showing how to install a French cleat on the wall for easy hanging. I find this is the best way to hang a flag just because it's easy to level it without having to hold the flag up there. Now I'm going to tape off my flag and mark with my templates that I've made for where the stars will go. I mark the tops of where each stars will go and then use the other half of my jig to lay along those marks. I put a small dab of glue on each star and then put them in place with the tips right in the center of my mark and square them up. Next, I just move the jig on down to the next line and continue the process. Once I get the union lines done, I'll go back and do my other stars just by hand, by eye, centering them up in between. And we're done. After all the glue dries, I come back and burn my frame just to get that finishing touch. I then like to finish my flags with an HLVP sprayer, spraying a satin clear lacquer. I like lacquer because it dries very quickly, it looks great, and is very easy to apply. You can buy one of my flags at www.dwoodmaker.com. We also ship anywhere in the United States. The thin red line represents firefighters, the thin yellow line represents dispatchers, the thin blue line represents law enforcement, the thin green line is military. Here at Dwood, we are very strong supporters of our military, law enforcement, and everybody in first responders that back them. This is the best country ever. Hey, welcome back to Dwood. I can't talk. Hey, welcome back to Dwood. I'm David Stoller. Bet you like this flag, don't you? It's pretty badass.